The neon lights of Neo-Tokyo's underground district painted everything in shades of electric blue and poison green, casting long shadows that seemed to move with lives of their own. Nyx Shadowbane moved through these shadows like she was born to them, her black leather jacket blending seamlessly with the darkness between the flickering holo advertis. Immense, the Crimson Veil had trained her well 15 years of perfect kills, each one executed with surgical precision and artistic flair. Tonight's target should have been no different. She studied the holographic dossier projected from her wrist device, memorizing every detail of Marcus Vale's face. 32 years old, 6 feet tall, sandy brown hair with an infuriating habit of falling across his green eyes, information broker. They called him, though the file was frustratingly vague about what kind of information he actually brokered. No known combat training, no apparent security detail. No reason this should be anything more than a routine elimination. The market sprawled before her like a maze of steel and glass. Vendors hawking everything from synthetic food to black market cybernetic implants. The air hummed with the chatter of a dozen languages and the electronic whisper of credits changing hands. Nyx's enhanced hearing filtered through the noise. Searching for her target's voice, she'd studied recordings of him for hours, memorizing every inflection and laugh. She found him at a noodle stand, leaning against the counter with the casual confidence of someone who belonged everywhere and nowhere at once, even in the harsh artificial light. Marcus Vale was undeniably attractive. His smile came easily as he chatted with the vendor, an elderly woman who seemed genuinely fond of him. There was something magnetic about the way he moved, every gesture fluid and purposeful without appearing calculated. Nyx felt an unexpected flutter in her chestnut nerves. She'd left those behind years ago, but something else, something that made her hesitate when she should have been moving to strike. She forced herself to focus on the mission. The Crimson Veil didn't tolerate failure, and more importantly, they didn't tolerate sentiment. Marcus Vale was a target, nothing more. The reasons why someone wanted him dead were irrelevant. Her job was simply to make it happen. She began her approach, weaving through the crowd with practiced invisibility. The poison needle hidden in her ring would deliver a paralytic agent that would mimic a heart attack, clean, untraceable, and guaranteed to leave no evidence. 3 more steps, and she'd be within range. 2 steps. 1, Marcus said without turning around, his voice carrying clearly over the market's den. Most people try the accidental bump technique when they're planning to poison someone. Much more subtle than the whole predator stalking prey thing you've got going on. Nyx froze, her hand halfway to her ring. Round them, the market continued its chaotic dance, oblivious to the deadly tableau playing out at the noodle stand. The vendor had moved away, perhaps sensing the shift in atmosphere, or maybe warned by some signal Nyx had missed. Marcus turned to face her, and she was struck again by those green eyes. They held depths she hadn't expected. Intelligence mixed with something that might have been sadness. "Nyx Shadowbane," he said, as if they were old friends meeting for coffee. "I have to say, your reputation precedes you, though I was expecting someone taller. How do you know my name?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. The Crimson Veil's assassins were anonymous by design, their identities known only to their handlers. "Information is my business," Marcus replied, gesturing to the vendor, who reappeared with 2 bowls of steaming noodles. "And right now, I'm trading in the most valuable commodity of all, truth." He pushed 1 bowl toward her. "Hungry, it's on me." Nyx stared at the offered meal, her mind racing through possibilities. This was either an elaborate trap or the most confident target she'd ever encountered. Neither option appeared in her training manuals. "I'm here to kill you," she said bluntly, testing his reaction. "I know." Marcus picked up his chopsticks with the same casual grace he'd shown earlier. "Question is, do you know why?" The simple question hit her like a physical blow. In 15 years of assignments, Nyx had never asked why. The Crimson Veil provided targets. She eliminated them. Credits appeared in her account. The system was elegant in its simplicity, and she'd never felt the need to complicate it with moral considerations. "Does it matter?" she asked, though even as the words left her mouth, she realized they felt hollow. "To me, absolutely." Marcus took a bite of his noodles, apparently unbothered by the fact that a professional killer was standing 3 feet away. To you, well, that depends on whether your content being a weapon in someone else's hand, or if you'd prefer to be the one choosing your targets. Around them, the market pulsed with life. Couples argued over purchases, children ran between stalls while their parents shouted warnings. Vendors called out prices in musical cadences. It was a celebration of human chaos, beautiful and messy and real. Nix had walked through thousands of similar scenes, but always as an observer, never as a participant. You're stalling, she said, though she made no move to complete her mission. I'm offering you a choice. Marcus's expression grew serious, and she caught a glimpse of something harder beneath his easygoing exterior. Sit down, eat some noodles, and let me tell you why someone wants me dead. After that, if you still want to kill me, I won't stop you. The logical part of her mind, the part trained by years of Crimson Veil conditioning, screamed warnings. This was exactly the kind of psychological manipulation targets used when they were desperate. She should strike now, complete the mission, and report back to her handler within the hour. Instead, she found herself sliding onto the stool beside him. You have 5 minutes, she said, accepting the chopsticks he offered. Marcus's smile returned, though it was different now, warmer, more genuine. I'll make them count. The noodles were actually delicious, rich with flavors she couldn't identify. As she ate, Marcus began to talk, his voice low and intimate despite the crowded setting. He spoke about the nature of information, how it flowed through the city like water, carrying secrets and lies in equal measure. He talked about the people who paid him for truth and the ones who paid him to bury it. The thing about secrets, he said, watching her reaction carefully, is that they're only valuable as long as they stay hidden. Once they're out in the open, they become something else entirely. They become weapons. Nix found herself leaning closer, drawn by the passion in his voice. And you decide which secrets become weapons. Sometimes. Marcus's expression grew troubled. Though lately, I've been wondering if I've been making the right choices. The person who wants me dead, they're not angry about information I've sold. They're angry about information I've refused to sell. What kind of information? Marcus hesitated, and for the first time since their conversation began, he looked genuinely uncertain. The kind that could destroy innocent lives, the kind that turns children into orphans and lovers, into enemies. He met her eyes directly, the kind that turns people like you into weapons. The words hung between them like a challenge. Nix felt something stirring inside her, a curiosity she'd thought the Crimson Veil had trained out of her years ago. She wanted to know more about the secrets Marcus protected, about the person who wanted him dead, about the connection between his work and hers. Time's up, she said, though she made no move to leave. So it is. Marcus finished his noodles and stood, tossing credits onto the counter. I suppose this is where you decide whether to kill me or not. Nix studied his face, looking for fear, for deception, for any of the tells she'd been trained to recognize. Instead, she found only patient acceptance and something that might have been hope. Tomorrow night, she said finally, the old warehouse district, building 47, midnight. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Are you asking me on a date, or scheduling my execution? I'm giving you a chance to prove your words mean something. She stood as well, suddenly aware of how close they were, standing. Don't disappoint me. As she walked away, melting back into the crowd, Nix could feel his eyes on her. For the first time in 15 years, she'd left a target alive. The Crimson Veil would not be pleased. But as she disappeared into the neon-lit maze of the underground district, Nix found herself looking forward to tomorrow night with an anticipation that had nothing to do with killing. The abandoned warehouse district stretched out like a graveyard of industrial dreams, its skeletal remains casting jagged shadows under the pale moonlight. Building 47 stood among them like a monument to decay, its broken windows staring blindly at the polluted sky. Nix arrived 30 minutes early, as was her habit, using the time to survey potential escape routes and establish tactical advantages. She'd spent the day in turmoil, unable to shake the memory of Marcus Vale's green eyes, or the way he'd spoken about secrets as if they were living things. The Crimson Veil had contacted her twice for mission updates, and twice she'd deflected their questions with carefully crafted half-truths. She was walking a dangerous line. But something about Marcus had awakened a part of her she'd thought long dead. The warehouse's interior was a maze of rusted machinery and forgotten dreams. Nix positioned herself on a catwalk overlooking the main floor, her enhanced vision cutting through the darkness like a blade. If this was a trap, she'd be ready. If it wasn't, well, she wasn't sure what she was hoping for. Marcus appeared exactly at midnight, walking through the main entrance with the same casual confidence he'd shown at the noodle stand. He wore dark jeans and a leather jacket that had seen better days, but somehow he made the simple outfit look effortlessly stylish. In his hand, he carried a single white rose. "I know you're up there," he called out, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "The question is, are you planning to shoot me? Or are you going to come down and have a conversation?" Nix remained silent, studying him for signs of deception. He seemed genuinely alone, but appearances could be deceiving. She'd learned that lesson the hard way during her early years with the Crimson Veil. "Right then," Marcus said, settling onto a piece of machinery that might once have been a conveyor belt. "I'll start without you." He placed the rose beside him with careful reverence. "This is for Miranda Chen." She was a data analyst for quantum dynamics, 26 years old. Engaged to a musician named James. She had a cat named Pixel and a terrible addiction to vintage Earth films. The past tense sent a chill through Nix. She knew that tonette was the voice of someone speaking about the dead. "Miranda discovered something she shouldn't have," Marcus continued, his casual demeanor replaced by something harder. Evidence that quantum dynamics was selling weapons to both sides of the Proxima conflict. "She came to me, wanted to know if the information was worth anything. I told her it was worth everything, and that going public would probably get her killed." Nix found herself moving closer, drawn by the raw pain in his voice. She dropped silently to the main floor, though she kept to the shadows. She didn't listen. Marcus said, apparently unsurprised by her movement, 3 days after our meeting, Miranda Chen died in what the police called a random mugging. Her fiancé received a data chip containing footage of her final moments. The message was clear: this is what happens to people who can't keep their mouths shut. "What does this have to do with me?" Nix asked, though she was beginning to suspect she already knew the answer. "The person who ordered Miranda's death, the same person who hired you to kill me. They're planning something bigger, something that will make the Proxima conflict look like a minor disagreement." Marcus stood, his movements fluid despite the emotion in his voice. "I have the evidence to stop them, but I need to survive long enough to get it to the right people. And you think I'm going to help you?" Nix stepped into the light, her hand resting on the grip of her plasma pistol. "I don't even know if you're telling the truth. I can prove it." Marcus reached into his jacket slowly, producing a small data pad. "Everything's here: financial records, communication logs, even video footage of the meeting where they decided Miranda was too dangerous to live. Take a look." Nix hesitated. Accepting the data pad would mean crossing a line she'd never crossed before. It would mean choosing to know the truth about her targets, about the people who hired the Crimson Veil, about the system she'd served without question for 15 years. "Why me?" she asked instead. "If you need protection, there are other ways to get it." Marcus's smile was sad and knowing. "Because you're the best at what you do, and because I think you're tired of being a weapon in someone else's war." He extended the data pad toward her. "I'm offering you a chance to choose your own battles, Nix. To be the hero instead of the villain." The word hero hit her like a physical blow. Heroes were fairy tale constructs, myths created to make people feel better about the darkness in the world. She was a killer, trained and refined and perfect at her singular purpose. Heroes didn't exist in her reality. But as she looked at Marcus, really looked at him, she saw something she'd never seen in any of her targets before. He wasn't afraid of death. He was afraid of failure. He wasn't begging for his life. He was asking her to help him save others. "Show me," she said, accepting the data pad. The files were damning. Financial records showing payments to mercenary groups on both sides of the Proxima conflict. Communication logs detailing arms shipments and casualty projections. Video footage of corporate executives discussing civilian casualties as acceptable losses. And at the center of it all, a name that made Nix's blood run cold. Victoria Blackthorne, CEO of Meridian Industries and secret patron of the Crimson Veil. She's been playing both sides, Marcus said, reading her expression. Selling weapons to the rebels while simultaneously funding the government forces. The longer the conflict continues, the more money she makes. Miranda threatened to expose the whole operation, and now you're threatening to do the same thing. Nix's mind raced through the implications. If Marcus was telling the truth, then every assassination contract she'd fulfilled might have been part of a larger scheme. Every life she'd taken might have been in service of someone else's greed. I'm not threatening anything, Marcus said quietly. I'm going to stop her. With or without your help. The conviction in his voice was absolute. This wasn't a desperate man making empty promises. This was someone who'd already decided to sacrifice everything for a cause he believed in. The realization sent an unexpected thrill through Nix's chest. You're insane, she said, though there was no heat in the words. Probably. Marcus stepped closer, and she caught the scent of his cologne, something woodsy and masculine that made her pulse quicken. But I'm also right, and I think you know it. He was standing close enough now that she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes, could count the faint lines around them that suggested he smiled more often than he frowned. The proximity was intoxicating, dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with her mission. If I help you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, I become a traitor to everything I've ever known. The Crimson Veil doesn't forgive betrayal. Then we'll have to make sure they never find out. Marcus raised his hand slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and touched her cheek with gentle fingers. I won't lie to you, Nix. This is going to be dangerous. If we're caught, they'll kill us both. But if we succeed, we save lives. The words felt foreign on her tongue, but somehow right. We become the heroes. We become partners, Marcus corrected, his thumb tracing along her jawline, equals working toward a common goal. The touch sent electricity through her entire body. When was the last time someone had touched her with gentleness instead of violence? When had she last felt connected to another person as something other than predator and prey? This is insane, she repeated, but this time she was smiling. The best plans usually are. Marcus leaned closer, and she could feel his breath against her lips. So what do you say? Nix Shadowbane, ready to save the world. Instead of answering, she kissed him. The kiss was explosive. 15 years of suppressed emotion pouring out in a single moment of connection. Marcus responded with equal intensity, his arms wrapping around her waist and pulling her closer. For a heartbeat, the warehouse disappeared. The mission disappeared. Everything disappeared except the warmth of his mouth and the thundering of her heart. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. That was, Marcus began. A mistake, Nix finished. Though she made no move to step away from his embrace. The best kind, he agreed. His smile soft and genuine. So, partner, what's our first move? Nix looked down at the data pad in her hand, then back at Marcus's expectant face. She was about to betray everything she'd ever believed in, align herself with a target she'd been hired to kill, and declare war on the most powerful criminal organization in the galaxy. It was the most terrifying and exhilarating decision she'd ever made. First, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos in her chest. We need to get somewhere safe. Victoria Blackthorne doesn't just hire assassins, she collects them. By tomorrow, half the Crimson Veil will be hunting both of us. I know a place, Marcus said, his hand finding hers, somewhere even the Crimson Veil can't reach. As they walked toward the warehouse exit, Nix felt the weight of her old life falling away like a discarded skin. She was no longer just a weapon in someone else's war. She was a woman choosing her own battles, fighting for her own beliefs, standing beside a man who'd shown her what it meant to be truly alive. The game had changed completely, and for the first time in 15 years, Nix Shadowbane was playing to win. The safe house was nothing like Nix had expected. Instead of the sterile, utilitarian space she'd imagined, Marcus had led her to a converted subway station deep beneath the city's infrastructure. The platform had been transformed into a living space that managed to be both comfortable and secure, with soft lighting that painted everything in warm gold tones. and furniture that looked like it had been salvaged from a dozen different sources, but somehow worked together perfectly. "Welcome to my real office," Marcus said, gesturing to the space with obvious pride. "The information broker persona is useful for meeting clients, but this is where I actually work." Nix walked through the space in wonder, taking in details that revealed more about Marcus than hours of conversation might have. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with everything from ancient philosophy texts to contemporary fiction. A state-of-the-art computer system occupied the far end of the platform, its multiple screens displaying scrolling data feeds from across the galaxy. But it was the personal touches that caught her attention: photographs of people she didn't recognize, a guitar leaning against a chair, a small garden growing under artificial sunlight. "You live here?" she asked, running her fingers along the spine of a well-worn copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. For the past 3 years, Marcus moved to a small kitchen area and began preparing coffee, his movements efficient and practiced. "After I realized how deep the corruption went, I needed somewhere completely off the grid. The old transit tunnels were abandoned decades ago, but the infrastructure is still solid." The coffee smelled like paradise, rich and complex in ways that made Nix realize she'd been surviving on synthetic substitutes for years. As Marcus handed her a steaming mug, their fingers brushed, sending that same electric thrill through her system. "Tell me about the photographs," she said, settling onto a couch that was more comfortable than it had any right to be. Marcus's expression grew thoughtful as he joined her, careful to maintain just enough distance to be proper while close enough that she could feel his warmth. "People I've helped over the years. Miranda's not the first person to come to me with dangerous information. Just the first I couldn't save." Nix studied his profile in the golden light. "Is that what this is about? Guilt over one person you couldn't protect?" "Partly." Marcus took a sip of his coffee, his eyes distant. "But it's bigger than that. I've been collecting evidence for years: corruption, conspiracy, the kind of systemic rot that destroys civilizations from within. Miranda's death was just the catalyst. That made me realize I couldn't stay neutral anymore." "Neutral?" Nix tested the word, finding it strange on her tongue. "I've never been neutral about anything in my life. The Crimson Veil doesn't train neutrality, they train precision, efficiency, absolute commitment to the mission." "What was your first assignment?" Marcus asked, turning to face her fully. "Your first kill." The question should have been off limits, the kind of operational security violation that would have resulted in immediate termination from the Crimson Veil. Instead, Nix found herself answering honestly. "A corporate accountant named Thomas Reed. He'd discovered embezzlement in his company's finances and was planning to go public. I made it look like a heart attack, clean, untraceable, completely professional." She paused, remembering the man's face in his final moments. "I was 18. They told me I was protecting the greater good, maintaining economic stability. And you believed them." "I wanted to believe them." The admission felt like a confession. "I'd been with the Crimson Veil since I was 12, rescued from the streets and given purpose. Training, a family of sorts. Questioning their missions felt like questioning my own existence." Marcus set down his coffee and moved closer, his hand finding hers. "You were a child, Nix. They took a vulnerable girl and turned her into a weapon. That's not your fault." The gentleness in his voice nearly undid her. "I killed 37 people before I started questioning anything. 37 lives ended because I was too much of a coward to ask why. And now you're asking why." Marcus's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "That takes more courage than anything you've ever done." The contact was soothing and electric at the same time. Nix had been touched by lovers before, brief physical encounters that served biological needs without emotional connection. But this was different. Marcus touched her like she was precious, like she mattered beyond her utility as a weapon. "Tell me about your family," she said, needing to shift the focus away from her own pain. Marcus's expression grew wistful. "My parents were diplomats, killed in a terrorist attack when I was 16. I spent the next few years angry at the world, looking for someone to blame. That's how I got into information brokering. Actually, I wanted to understand why they'd died, who was responsible. And did you find out?" "Eventually." Marcus's smile was sad. Turns out they were killed because they were trying to broker peace between the factions. That certain people wanted to keep fighting. Sound familiar? The parallel to their current situation wasn't lost on Nix. So you decided to finish what they started. I decided to make sure other people didn't have to go through what I went through. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. Information is power, Nix, in the right hands. It can prevent wars, save lives, change the course of history. In the wrong hands, it becomes a weapon. Nix finished. Everything becomes a weapon in the wrong hands. Marcus's eyes met hers, and she saw something that made her pulse quicken, even love. The word hung between them like a challenge. Love was a luxury Nix had never been able to afford. A vulnerability the Crimson Veil had trained out of her through years of careful conditioning. But looking at Marcus now, seeing the way he looked at her not as a weapon or a tool, but as a woman worth protecting, she felt something shifting inside her chest. Is that what this is? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, Marcus admitted, but I know I've never felt this way about anyone before. And I know that the thought of losing you to Victoria Blackthorn's games terrifies me more than dying. Before Nix could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the safe house. Marcus was on his feet instantly, moving to his computer system with practiced urgency. Motion sensors, he said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Multiple contacts, coming from 3 different access points. They found us. Nix felt the familiar chill of combat readiness settling over her. How many? At least a dozen. Professional movement patterns, military-grade equipment. Marcus's face was grim as he brought up security footage on his screens. Crimson Veil strike. Team, led by someone I don't recognize. Nix moved to look at the screens, her blood running cold as she recognized the tall, angular figure leading the assault team. Raven Blackwood, my former partner, now one of their top operatives. If they sent her, they're not planning to take prisoners. Can we get out of here? Not without fighting through them. Nix was already moving, checking her weapons and running through tactical scenarios. The safe house is secure, but not against a full assault team. We have maybe 10 minutes before they breach the main entrance. Marcus nodded, his calm in the face of mortal danger both impressive and endearing. Then we make our stand here. I've got some defensive systems that should even the odds. As if summoned by his words, hidden panels began opening throughout the safe house, revealing an impressive array of automated defense systems. Gun turrets emerged from the ceiling. Energy barriers flickered to life across strategic choke points, and the lights shifted to a tactical red that would preserve their night vision while hampering the attackers. I'm starting to think you're not just an information broker, Nix said, impressed despite their dire situation. I'm a lot of things, Marcus replied, arming himself with a military-grade plasma rifle. But right now, I'm someone who's not going to let them take you back to that life. The first explosions echoed through the tunnels, followed by the distinctive whine of energy weapons. The assault had begun. Nix felt the familiar cold calm of combat settling over her. But this time it was different. She wasn't fighting for credits or contracts or the approval of distant masters. She was fighting for her future, for the possibility of something better, for the man beside her who'd shown her what it meant to choose her own battles. Stay close, she said, checking her weapons one final time. And Marcus, yeah, when this is over, I want to hear more about that love thing you mentioned. His smile was brilliant even in the crimson light. Deal. But first, let's make sure. There's an after this is over. The safe house shook as the first breach charges detonated. Through the smoke and chaos, Nix could see the distinctive black armor of Crimson Veil operatives flooding into the tunnels. The battle for their future was about to begin. The battle lasted 17 minutes and felt like 17 hours. Nix fought with a precision and fury she'd never experienced before. Every movement calculated not just for maximum efficiency, but for the protection of the man beside her. Marcus proved to be far more than just an information broker. His combat skills were sharp, his tactics sound, and his courage absolute. When the last of the assault team fell, the safe house was in ruins. Smoke hung in the air like a funeral shroud, and the acrid smell of burned electronics mixed with the metallic tang of blood. But they were alive, And that was more than Nix had dared hope for when the attack began. "Raven's not here," she said. "Checking the bodies of the fallen operatives. This was a probing attack, designed to test our defenses and gather intelligence." Marcus slumped against a damaged wall, a cut above his left eye bleeding freely. "So they know about the safe house, our capabilities, probably our weapons inventory. What's their next move?" "They'll go back to Blackthorn with a full report. Then she'll decide whether to send a larger team or..." Nix trailed off, a terrible possibility occurring to her. "Or what? Or she'll make this personal. Raven and I have history. We were partners for 3 years, closer than sisters. If Blackthorn convinces her that I've been compromised, that I'm a traitor to everything the Crimson Veil stands for, she'll come for you herself." Marcus finished. "She'll come for both of us, and she won't stop until one of us is dead." Nix moved to the medical kit, beginning to clean Marcus's wound. With gentle efficiency, "We need to get out of here. The safe house is compromised, and it's only a matter of time before they mount a full assault." Marcus caught her hand as she worked, his green eyes intense in the emergency lighting. "There's something I need to tell you, something I should have said before." The seriousness in his voice made Nix's chest tighten. "What?" "I know who you are, Nix. Not just your name or your reputation. I know your real identity. Your past." The world seemed to stop. Nix pulled back, her hand instinctively moving to her weapon. "That's impossible. The Crimson Veil erases all records of their operatives' previous lives. They erased the official records," Marcus said carefully. "But they couldn't erase everything. Your birth name is Catherine Chen. Miranda Chen was your older sister." The revelation hit Nix like a physical blow. Images flashed through her mind, half-remembered fragments of a life before the Crimson Veil, before the training and the conditioning and the careful erasure of everything she'd once been. A woman with kind eyes and gentle hands, calling her Katie, holding her close during thunderstorms. "No," she whispered, but even as she said it, she knew it was true. The resemblance she'd felt when Marcus showed her Miranda's photograph, the strange familiarity of the name, the way her heart had clenched when he'd spoken about her sister's death. "Miranda wasn't just exposing corruption," Marcus continued, his voice gentle but relentless. "She was trying to find you. She'd been searching for her missing sister for years, following every lead, bribing officials, never giving up hope. When she discovered the connection between quantum dynamics and the Crimson Veil, she realized she'd found a way to trace you." Nix felt like she was drowning, her carefully constructed identity crumbling around her. "The data she brought you included financial records showing payments to the Crimson Veil for your services. She was going to expose the whole network, not just for the sake of justice, but to find you." Marcus stood slowly, his movements careful and non-threatening. "She died trying to save you, Nix. The sister you don't remember died trying to bring you home." The grief hit her like a tidal wave. 15 years of suppressed emotion, breaking free at once. Nix found herself sobbing. Great gasping sobs that shook her entire body. Marcus gathered her into his arms, holding her as she wept for the sister she'd lost twice, once to the Crimson Veil's conditioning, and once to their bullets. "I'm so sorry," Marcus whispered into her hair. "I should have told you sooner, but I needed to know I could trust you. I needed to know you were ready to hear the truth. She was looking for me," Nix said through her tears. "All this time, she was looking for me, and I didn't even remember her name. She never stopped believing you were alive, even when everyone else told her to give up. She never stopped looking." Marcus pulled back to look at her face, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. "She would be so proud of who you've become, Nix, not the weapon the Crimson Veil created, but the woman who chose to walk away from that life." The sound of approaching aircraft broke through their moment of grief. Marcus moved to his damaged computer system, pulling up what remained of his sensor network. "Multiple contacts," he reported. "Heavy transport, military escort. They're not taking any chances this time." Nix wiped her eyes, forcing herself back into tactical mode. "How long until they reach us?" 20 minutes, maybe less." Marcus was already moving, gathering essential equipment and data storage devices. "There's an emergency exit that leads to the old maintenance tunnels. We can reach the surface about 1 kilometer from here." And then what? Nix asked, checking her weapons and ammunition. We can't run forever. Blackthorn has resources, connections, an entire organization dedicated to hunting people like us. Then we stop running. Marcus turned to face her, his expression resolute. We take the fight to her. I've got enough evidence to bring down Meridian Industries and expose the Crimson Veil's entire operation. But I need to get it to the right people. And I need to do it before they silence us permanently. The evidence won't matter if we're dead, Nix pointed out. That's why we're going to make sure we're not the only ones who know the truth. Marcus pulled out a small device, its surface covered in blinking lights. Dead man's switch if either of us fails to check in every 12 hours. The evidence gets automatically transmitted to every major news outlet, government agency, and law enforcement organization in the galaxy. Nix stared at the device, understanding its implications. You're making us too valuable to kill. I'm making us too dangerous to ignore. Marcus clipped the device to his belt. Blackthorn can't afford to have this information go public. She'll have to negotiate. She doesn't negotiate, Nix said grimly. She eliminates problems. Then we'll have to convince her that we're not a problem she can eliminate. Marcus shouldered his pack and headed for the emergency exit. Come on, partner. Time to end this. As they made their way through the maintenance tunnels, Nix found herself thinking about Miranda, about the sister she'd lost and the life she'd been denied. The Crimson Veil had taken everything from her, but they'd also given her the skills. She needed to fight back. Marcus, she said as they emerged into the night air, when we face Blackthorn, I want to be the one to tell her who I really am. I want her to know that Miranda Chen's sister is the one bringing her empire down. Marcus smiled, and even in the darkness, she could see the pride in his eyes. I think Miranda would like that. Above them, the lights of approaching aircraft grew brighter. The final confrontation was coming, and Nix felt a sense of completion she'd never experienced before. She was no longer just a weapon in someone else's war. She was Catherine Chen, sister to the brave woman who'd died trying to save her, partner to the man who'd shown her what it meant to choose her own battles. It was time to finish what Miranda had started. The Meridian Industries tower stretched into the night sky like a steel and glass monument to corporate power, its upper floors glowing with the cold light of wealth and influence. Nix stood on the adjacent rooftop, watching the building's security patterns through enhanced optics, her mind calculating angles and probabilities with the precision of a master craftsman. 67 floors, she murmured to Marcus, who was finalizing their communication setup. Private elevators, automated defense systems, and enough security personnel to staff a small army. Not exactly a friendly neighborhood visit. Blackthorn's expecting us, Marcus replied, his fingers dancing across a portable computer interface. The question is whether she's planning to negotiate or eliminate us. Both. Nix said with certainty. She'll try to negotiate first, and when that fails, she'll activate every asset she has. The dead man's switch has bought us a meeting, but it won't keep us alive indefinitely. Marcus stood and moved to her side, his presence warm and reassuring. In the cold night air, any regrets about not running when we had the chance? Nix considered the question, thinking about the woman she'd been just days ago, a weapon without conscience, a killer without cause, a ghost moving through the world without ever truly living. No regrets. Miranda deserves justice, and I deserve to know who I really am. And us? Marcus asked, his voice soft. Any regrets about us? The question hung in the air between them like a promise. Nix turned to face him, seeing her own reflection in his green eyes. Ask me again, when this is over. Deal. Marcus leaned down and kissed her, a gentle press of lips that tasted like hope and possibility. Ready to storm the castle, princess, ready to save the kingdom, Nix replied, surprised by how natural the words felt. They moved across the rooftop like dancers, their individual skills complementing each other in ways that seemed almost supernatural. Marcus's technical expertise got them through the building's outer defenses, while Nix's infiltration training guided them past security checkpoints and surveillance systems. The executive floor was a shrine to corporate excess, its marble halls lined with priceless artwork and windows that offered commanding views of the city below. But it was the office at the far end that drew their attention, a sanctuary of power, where Victoria Blackthorne waited like a spider in the center of her web. Catherine Chen, Blackthorne said as they entered, her voice cultured and smooth. I must admit, I never expected to meet you in person. Your sister spoke of you often during our final conversation. Nix felt anger flare in her chest, but she kept her expression neutral. Victoria Blackthorne was exactly what she'd expected: beautiful, intelligent, and completely without conscience. The woman behind the desk wore her power like armor, her every gesture calculated for maximum impact. I prefer Nix, she said, her hand resting casually on her weapon. And I understand you have something that belongs to me. Your past. Blackthorne smiled, the expression cold as winter. I assure you, that was a gift freely given. The Crimson Veil saved you from a life of poverty and insignificance. We gave you purpose, skill, a reason to exist. You gave me blood on my hands, Nix replied. 37 lives ended because I was too brainwashed to question orders. 37 obstacles removed for the greater good, Blackthorne corrected. You were instrumental in maintaining stability across 3-star systems. The work you did prevented wars, Miss Chen. It saved countless lives. By ending others, Marcus stepped forward, his own weapon visible but not threatening. The same logic that justified Miranda's death, I suppose. Blackthorne's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Annoyance, perhaps, or simple boredom. Your sister was a romantic, Mr. Vale. She believed in justice, in right and wrong, in the naive notion that the universe operated according to moral principles. Such people are dangerous to the natural order. The natural order being your profit margins, Nix said. The natural order being stability, prosperity, and the continuation of human civilization. Blackthorne stood and moved to the window, her silhouette framed against the city lights. Do you know what happens when idealists like your sister succeed, Miss Chen? When they expose the necessary compromises that keep society functioning. Enlighten me. Chaos, war, the collapse of everything we've built. Blackthorne turned back to them, her expression passionate now. I've prevented 3 major conflicts in the past decade alone. The Proxima situation, the Titan mining dispute, the Outer Rim succession crisis, all resolved through careful application of force and strategic information management. You started those conflicts, Marcus said flatly. I have the financial records to prove it. I managed those conflicts. Blackthorne corrected, channeled inevitable human aggression into controlled outlets that minimized casualties and maximized stability. The alternative would have been total war. Nix studied the woman before her, seeing something she'd never expected: genuine belief. Victoria Blackthorne wasn't just a criminal or a corrupt executive. She was a true believer in her own vision of order, convinced that her methods were not just justified but necessary. You really believe that? Nix said, almost wonderingly. I know it. Blackthorne moved closer, her voice taking on an almost maternal tone. Just as I know that you understand the necessity of difficult choices, you've made them yourself. Catherine, 37 times you chose the greater good over personal sentiment. I chose to follow orders without thinking. You chose to trust in something larger than yourself. Blackthorne was close enough now that Nix could see the intelligence burning in her eyes. The Crimson Veil gave you purpose, direction, a cause worth fighting for. And now, what do you have now besides misguided sentiment and a man who's filled your head with romantic notions? The question hit deeper than Nix had expected. What did she have? A few days of freedom, a connection to a past she barely remembered, feelings for a man she'd known less than a week. She has choice, Marcus said, his voice steady. The right to decide for herself. What's worth fighting for? Choice is a luxury, Blackthorne replied. And luxuries are for people who don't have to make hard decisions. You've seen what happens when people like your sister make choices based on idealism rather than pragmatism. I've seen what happens when people like you make choices based on greed, Nix countered. Miranda died because she threatened your profits, not because she was wrong. Miranda died because she refused to understand that some secrets are worth keeping, some lies are worth telling, some evils are worth tolerating because the alternatives are worse. Blackthorne returned to her desk, her movements graceful and controlled. But we're not here to debate philosophy. You have something I want, and I have something you want. We're listening, Marcus said. The dead man's switch. Blackthorn said simply, deactivate it, and I'll give you both clean identities. Enough money to disappear anywhere in the galaxy. And the guarantee that no one will ever come looking for you again. And if we refuse? Nix asked. Then you'll discover that there are. Fates worse than death. Blackthorn's smile was sharp as a blade. The Crimson Veil has ways of making people cooperate, Miss Chen. Ways that even you might find uncomfortable. The threat hung in the air like poison. Nix felt the familiar weight of her weapon, the comforting presence of Marcus beside her, the knowledge that they were surrounded by enough security to stop a small army. But she also felt something else, a sense of completion, of choices made, and consequences accepted. Counteroffer, she said finally. You surrender yourself to the authorities, confess to your crimes, and disband the Crimson Veil. In exchange, we'll make sure you live long enough to